What is up, guys? Welcome to the Being Beautifully Honest podcast and channel. Thanks for being here, being subbed. If you're not, hit the button. And if you're listening on YouTube, hit the like. It's like walking in the room and hitting that light switch. Let's brighten up the place and get into the politics and BS. So when it comes to Trump and money and these foreign nations and all of the questions that come swirling into why this man actually even got into politics anyway, nothing about this story surprises me whatsoever. So there's been a secret probe into whether he took $10 million from Egypt during the time of his, quote, cash-strapped 2016 campaign.
It's a great honor to be with President El-Sisi, who's a friend of mine for now a long time, it seems, right? From even before the campaign. We met during the campaign, a little before the campaign, and so we got along right away. I didn't actually ask for an endorsement, but I think if I would have asked, I might have gotten it.
From the start of his presidency, Donald Trump heaped praise on Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, a man who just a few years earlier led the country's military to overthrow the democratically elected president from power. During one G7 summit trip, he even referred to Sisi as his, quote, favorite dictator. And while Trump may not have asked for Sisi's endorsement during his 2016 presidential campaign, bombshell reporting from the Washington Post reveals new details about one of the most closely held and secretive federal investigations into something else Sisi may have provided Trump in the waning days of that cash-strapped campaign. $10 million, which would be in clear violation of federal law that bans any U.S. candidates from taking foreign funds. That investigation was being led by none other than Robert Mueller, who at the same time was investigating Trump's ties to Russia. The Post reports that investigators identified a cash withdrawal in Cairo of $9,998,000, nearly identical to the amount described in the intelligence, and nearly equal to the amount Trump had loaned his campaign weeks earlier, a key theory investigators pursued. Based on intelligence and international money transfers, was that Trump was willing to provide the funds to his campaign in October 2016 because he expected to be repaid by Sisi, according to people familiar with the probe. One of the people describing the thinking at the time told the Post it wasn't a smoking gun, but it was very clear that there was so much smoke, and now more smoke, there must be a fire. However, investigators were never able to answer the question of whether Trump did in fact accept an illegal campaign contribution from Sisi, as they were blocked by the political appointees at Trump's Department of Justice in 2019 from obtaining the bank records that they believed would answer that question, and the case was ultimately shut down. And who was leading the charge in raising doubts whether there was sufficient evidence to continue the probe of Trump? I think you can guess. Trump's then Attorney General William Barr. Joining me now is one of the journalists who broke this story, Aaron Davis, investigative reporter for the Washington Post, and Jill Wine-Banks, former Watergate assistant special prosecutor, MSNBC contributor, and friend of the show. I do want to start with you, Aaron Davis. This was a spectacular report. I read through it, and there's so much in it. Talk about how the $10 million or nearly $10 million transfer from this bank in Egypt was flagged by the Justice Department in the first place.
That's really interesting. We found that the first inkling of this transaction came to the U.S. government through its intelligence community and through an informant, in fact, that flagged that this transaction had been initiated. And then we found that the CIA had corroborated parts of this intelligence and Sisi's intent to send that money. And those two pieces combined were what really put the Mueller investigative team, put this in their crosshairs. They refer to this as Team 10 inside the Mueller probe, referring to the $10 million that they thought might have come from Egypt. And then once they found that physical evidence of nearly $10 million having been withdrawn from an account, and not just any account, but one that was linked to the Egyptian General Intelligence Service, this is the Egyptian version of the CIA, that it really solidified the need and the idea of investigators to move forward with haste, a second whole round of investigation they wanted to do after Mueller.
All right. So for those of you that have listened to that and you're like, well, what's the big deal? The whole point in Donald Trump running for president the first time, and I already did a podcast talking about that, it was all about business and for himself. It wasn't for the betterment of the country. It wasn't to, quote unquote, make America great again. He could give a damn about America, right? He wants to make his pockets, his bank accounts, his businesses great again, because he is broke, has been broke. He could, the definition of broke for people like him is, yeah, they could have a whole lot of assets, but a whole lot more liabilities. Okay. So when you subtract the liabilities and assets, like you get a negative, and that's where he had been for a long time. And so with all of those things being said, because he has a lot of expenses, just the day-to-day operations of his businesses are extremely expensive. And if they're not really generating the revenue like that, you're going to be in the red. So for him to be able to get connections with all of these different countries and the foreign leaders and getting them in his pockets, and then having people in his administration who pretty much overlooked a whole lot of things that were going on when it came to a lot of the places he has been able to get these connections with to enrich himself and not enrich the country. A lot of those things, they may have been investigated, but they were overlooked, and it was like, nothing to see here, moving on, moving forward. So he and his family, Jared Kushner, Ivanka Trump, himself, they have been able to benefit so amazingly when he was in office, and even after the fact, because of the connections that they got while being in office. And let's be clear, any regular person that had the background that he has wouldn't even be able to get a federal job to be able to secure a security clearance, let alone becoming the president of the United States. And then they were just giving out security clearances to his family members like candy. It's absolutely unfair. It's unreal. It's unrighteous. But it's the country that we live in. They have allowed a lot of corrupt things to go on because of what he looks like. Let's just be clear. So $10 million from Egypt going to Trump. Not going to the United States government, going to Trump. Do you really think that that sounds like something that is for the betterment of the country, to make America great again? Absolutely not. So this probe is not shocking to me, but unfortunately, the probes, the investigations, the reports, all of these different things, it happens and then nothing happens to him. Now, we know that he's going through all of these other situations with court in different states and cities. We'll see what comes of those things, because the Supreme Court has pretty much tried to make him ruler supreme, and nothing that he does can be checked, and he's pretty much a king. But it ain't over. It ain't over. And I just really hope and pray that a whole lot more things come out like this about him, that people need to not just talk about briefly, but they need to stay on it. It needs to stay in the people's faces. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because it's just more proof on top of what I've already talked about before, that this man has absolutely zero interest in leading this country, in making America great again. All he cares about is himself and enriching his own pockets and being a profitable person. That's it. He could care less if this country is broke and broken. So you can let me know what you feel about this in the comments. Thanks for being here, liking, and subscribing. I'm Beth, just being beautifully honest. So until next time, I wanted to keep it brief, beautiful, and now I'm going to say bye.